Helsinki Committee submission to the Norway Borgarting Court, JW Apologist. So when we think of a JW Apologist, what the Helsinki Committee is doing in Norway, it makes me think of Massimo. And if we took a look at Massimo, he's right on the Jehovah's Witness website. He's an apologist, Dr. Massimo Introvine, and he gives, they have him right on their website talking about doing apologist work, how he's fighting for Jehovah's Witness. And he also runs the Bitter Winter magazine. It features Jehovah's Witnesses all the time. You can tell that he's getting lots of money from Jehovah's Witnesses because these guys don't work for free. These guys are businesses. This is, if you do a little bit of research on these guys, you can see that Massimo, there's all kinds of information on him. He's a sociologist of religion. He's he works with religions such as Scientology. So here we have it in the context there of the debates over Scientology in France and Germany. He's helping them there to get their religion off the ground. So when I think of stuff like this, I think of Jehovah's Witnesses out there. They probably don't really know that their religion is being defended by these cult apologists that defend Scientology and other religions. Now we're going to take a look in Norway what's going on with Helsinki. Helsinki is also a group that works with apologists. And this is their website. You can see here, how can you help the human rights defender? That's what they claim they are, a human rights defender. So Jehovah's Witnesses are looking for help on the human rights end. But what about the ex-Jehovah's Witnesses? This is what I wonder. They don't talk about them. They defend these cults. They're cult apologists. So let's take a look at the Avoid JW article. This is it. They wrote an article on it. Norwegian Helsinki Committee submission to the Borgarting Court. So we're going to take a look at this stuff and see what it has to say. Okay, here we go. So it says, as we see it here, there is no basis for concluding that the practices of Jehovah's Witnesses constitute such an offense, even though they may have significant costs for those involved. This is what the Helsinki Committee is saying. We'll blow that up for you. Now, Oslo, Norway, the Norwegian Helsinki Committee submitted a report dated January 17, 2025 to the Borgarting Court, where Jehovah's Witnesses were appealing their loss of funding. In their report, they state that they believe that the Court of Appeal should agree with Jehovah's Witnesses. They say we analyze that report. So the main points of the report: the Norwegian Helsinki Committee believes that the exclusionary practices of Jehovah's Witnesses do not constitute a clear violation of children's rights. They claim that the court places too much emphasis on the negative consequences of exclusion, and not enough on the fact that the members are aware of the practice in advance. The committee questions whether Jehovah's Witnesses are treated more strictly than other religious communities with similar exclusionary practices, and they call for a comparison with other religious groups that also practice exclusion or social exclusion. And they point out that Jehovah's Witnesses have historically been subjected to persecution in, among other places, Nazi Germany and Russia. And they believe that this should make the authorities extra cautious about adopting restrictions against them. And they point out that the ECHR has previously confirmed that the states have a limited right to intervene in the internal affairs of religious communities, as long as members are free to leave. It's a good question. What do you call free to leave? You can walk out the door, but you are trapped mentally. We'll see how Avoid JW talks about this. It is true that the exclusion practice has costs. The Norwegian Helsinki Committee presents leaving as a free choice, but they ignore the serious social consequences. There are not only costs of exclusion, but often total social isolation, including loss of contact with the family and friends, which can have serious psychological consequences. So if you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, you left, you know that this is true, that there's a lot of psychological consequences in leaving. It says this isn't a cost, this is a harm. And this is not acceptable that a cohort of humanity is harmed so a religion has freedom to receive funding. And that's it in a nutshell. They want JW.org to be free, to do what they want. They want to get all the money, the funding, but they want to harm people, children, adults, anybody that's in their way. They shun disfellowship. They cause serious psychological isolation, social isolation, loss of contact and family, friends. And that's not against human rights. Well, it makes me wonder how they get these human rights organizations fighting for them when they're breaking human rights themselves, the human rights of ex-members. How do they do that? I guarantee you they do it with money, and they pay these apologists money. And if you look here, the very first thing on this site, this Helsinki site, is about donating. How can you help? It's all about donating. The money raised, and they do help. They help different. They have different causes in helping different places around the world. And but it's all about money, guaranteed. Here they talk about who they are. They say they're a marathon runner for human rights. We're in the Norwegian Helsinki Committee work to promote justice and freedom. But you see, ex-members of some of these religious cults, they don't have justice and they don't have freedom. And then they say, and the core message, we fight for human rights to apply to everyone, regardless of race, class, faith, gender, sexual orientation, because we believe it's a key to safety and security. So they're missing the mark here. All of these disfellowship people from these religions, they're not fighting for. They don't give a rat's behind about the ex-members. They're only fighting for these large cults, Scientology, JW.org, all these cults they fight for. Why? Well, they talk about their history. I'm not going to get into it all, but I did write these guys an email. I'll read it to you after. Let's get back to the article. The Helsinki Committee overlooks the fact that children and young people in Jehovah's Witness community do not have a real choice because they grow up in an environment where deviation is severely punished. And it's not enough that a practice is known in advance when the alternative is social ostracism. Therefore, the freedom of choice is an illusion. There are Christian communities with strict moral rules, but few practice exclusion as harshly as Jehovah's Witnesses. They mention Islamic movements, but many of these do not practice exclusion in the same organized way as the Jehovah's Witnesses. And even if they did, then it is imperative that victims of this harmful practice notify the Norwegian authorities so that they can determine if the law has been broken. Now, even though Jehovah's Witnesses have been subjected to persecution, this is not an argument to exempt them from the national laws. Now, the authorities must protect the rights of individuals, especially children's rights to choose their faith without fear of social punishment. And the Norwegian Helsinki Committee acknowledges that the practice of exclusion has consequences, but they argue that the state should not interfere. And this is problematic because the state has a responsibility to protect children from harmful practices, even when they take place within the religious environments. And also, the state is handing out taxpayers' money to this religious cult that shuns children. So that has to be said. These cults are money grabbers. They just have their hands out wanting money from the state. And that's what this is about. Now, in response to the Helsinki Committee, the harm toward humans, whether it is few people or many, can never be justified to continue funding of a religion. Avoid JW. And at the outset, we express our sincere appreciation for the Norwegian Helsinki Committee's unwavering commitment to upholding freedom of religion and belief, and their dedication to ensuring that individuals can freely practice their faith is commendable and essential to any democratic society. However, based on our extensive experience and deep understanding of the practices of Jehovah's Witnesses, we believe there are critical nuances that require clarification. The current framing of the debate does not fully capture the reality of how their policies affect individuals' rights, particularly regarding the freedom to leave the religion without undue hardship. And it is crucial to examine the issues in its entirety, especially concerning the consequences of their practice of exclusion. What the case is really about? The case is not about restricting religious freedom, rather it's about protecting fundamental human rights, especially the rights of individuals, including children. And to make independent choices about their faith without the threat of social isolation. And Jehovah's Witness religion is all about the disfellowshipping. If you don't do this, you get disfellowshipped. If you do this, you get disfellowshipped. So they're trying to program and indoctrinate their people into a certain way through this disfellowshipping, the fear of disfellowshipping. Jehovah's Witness practice of exclusion is not merely a religious doctrine, but it's a powerful social control mechanism. And that's exactly what it is. It creates an environment where leaving the community is so costly, emotionally, socially, and psychologically, that it's often not a genuine choice at all. This reality is particularly severe for individuals raised within the faith, who may lose their entire social support system simply for deciding they no longer wish to be part of this religion. And consider too, when members or former or otherwise criticize the practice of Jehovah's Witnesses' exclusion practice, they are treated more harshly than those who do not. Critics are labeled apostates and are not welcome to return in the same way as those who silently go along with the practice. The former are the ones they refer to in the court submission as disgruntled former members, and they try to portray them as liars. And this is very concerning for the reasons that should be obvious, as it creates a culture where questioning harmful practices is met with severe persecution. Addressing the Norwegian Helsinki Committee's misunderstandings, exclusion is not a free choice. When individuals leave Jehovah's Witnesses, they are not just changing their religious affiliation. They are being completely cut off, from their entire social network, including family members. And my question from the very beginning, how does this line up with the Bible? The Bible says, honor your father and your mother. It says that right in the Ten Commands. Jehovah's Witnesses use the Old Testament to back their blood doctrine. So let's use the Old Testament to back honoring parents. And Jesus confirms that you honor your parents. You love your parents. But in the Jehovah's Witness religion, you cut them off. If they leave the faith, you cut them off. If you're the kids in the religion, you cut your parents off. And this is the teaching of this destructive cult. It's a teaching of man. This is not a teaching from the Bible. Now, this level of social punishment constitutes coercion, not freedom. There's no freedom involved in this religion. And for those born into the faith, there was never an initial choice to become a Jehovah's Witness. They were just born in. Yet, if they decide to leave, they face severe consequences. And that has to change, folks. This is not an expression of free will, but rather an institutionalized form of social ostracism. Nicely put. And children's rights are violated in reality. Norwegian authorities, they've recognized that the practices of exclusion violates the children's rights to freedom of religion. And once a child is baptized into the Jehovah's Witness cult, they are bound by a system that does not allow them to freely choose to leave without extreme consequences, including the loss of their family connections. And the Helsinki Committee's comparison to legal punishment for criminal behavior is deeply, deeply flawed. There is a fundamental difference between facing legal consequences for breaking the law and suffering severe social punishment for making a personal decision about one's faith. Jehovah's Witnesses are not treated unfairly compared to other religious communities. While many religious communities enforce strict norms, the Jehovah's Witness policies on exclusion are extraordinary in their severity. The practice results in total social ostracism, even by immediate family members, making it uniquely harmful. The issue at hand is not whether the state likes or dislikes Jehovah's Witnesses, but whether their exclusionary practices are compatible with fundamental human rights. The extreme consequences of these policies set them apart from other faith groups and warrants scrutiny. What is more important, the funding of religion or the harm to humans? Remember, this case isn't so much about religious freedom, this case, as it's about religious funding. This is about money, folks. And it's about money for these apologists too. They get big donations from jw.org, and that's why they write papers for them. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses still have their freedom to meet together and worship. They can still go door to door sharing their beliefs, and they can read their Bible. It's not a real Bible, it's a New World Translation, just so you guys know. But they can do that. They can read their book of JW. It's like the Book of Mormon. It's so twisted and out of shape, but they can read it. They can do all their things they want. They can pray to their God without any hindrance from the government. Therefore, the harm towards humans, whether it's a few people or many, can never be justified to continue funding this religion in particular. Conclusion. We urge the Norwegian Helsinki Committee to take a deeper look into the exclusionary practices of Jehovah's Witnesses by engaging with former members who have first-hand experience of the severe consequences. Understanding these personal testimonies will provide invaluable insights into why these practices are problematic from a human rights perspective. Freedom of religion is not just about the right to receive funding for one's faith. It must also include the freedom to leave a religion without facing undue punishment. And we welcome any opportunity for further dialogue, and we are more than willing to provide additional information about how exclusion within Jehovah's Witnesses truly affects people in the practice. End of article. So what do we do next? Well, I would encourage everyone to go on to their site. Go on to the Helsinki site and contact them. You can contact them. You can look at here's the Norwegian Helsinki Committee right here. You can contact them. They have an email here. That's what I did, and you can also contact them for Norway. There's a Norway one here. And if you go about us, they show the countries they work within. These are all the countries. Norway's right here, so I clicked on Norway. Kind of read through it, and there's a contact right at the end. Where is it? Right here, Gunnar M. Slidell. So I emailed him. I sent this out to him as well. And what did I say? I said, I'm following the Norway and checked out your website. It says, and their website says this, it says about the Norwegian Helsinki Committee that their mission, they're a group of people devoted to struggling for justice and freedom worldwide, and the core belief, we believe that defending the human rights of everyone, including race, creed, gender, sexual orientation, is key to promoting security, prosperity for all. Well, what about homosexuals that leave the Jehovah's Witness religion, or they identify as homosexual within the religion? They get disfellowshipped. They get cut off. So there's some human rights along with everyone else that gets cut off and disfellowshipped and their human rights are violated. So I say to them, my question to you, what about the human rights of ex-members of the Jehovah's Witness religion? Our human rights are violated. Freedom to leave said religion cult without mental persecution, shunning, family ties being cut. They have no respect for the Bible command to honor your parents. They coerce and pressure you into choosing death over life when it comes to medical treatments involving blood. And if you do not obey, you are shunned and disassociated. This is the biggest cult on earth that worships men over the Bible. They send all of their money out of country to the U.S. headquarters to support the wishes of 11 narcissist male white men. This is a cult. Shame on your organization for your cult support. I will make a video to expose your money-grabbing, cult-loving organization. Shame on you. Get your facts straight and you will see that XJWs are the ones being persecuted and their human rights are violated. Do an article on that and be honest. Oh, sorry. We didn't have a big enough donation for you like the Watchtower gives you to be a cult apologist. Again, shame on your corrupt organization. And I'm going to call it as it is. Even though they do some good out there, it's corrupt. I'm linking these guys in with this guy, Massimo. This guy's part of the Vampire Association. He runs it. That's this guy. And he's right on the Jehovah's Witness website. You can learn all about him. Let me pull that up. Massimo. He's another big cult apologist. Same as the Helsinki group. They fight for cults. And there's a lot of these groups that fight for cults, and they want lots of support. They want money, and that's what comes up. Donate, donate, donate. What can you do? Donate. It's all about money. There's nothing that says you can get involved. It just donate. So it's interesting when we take a look at all of this, and when we boil it all down, we have a ton of cult apologists out there fighting for religions, well, cults like Jehovah's Witnesses. And it is all about money. That's the end game. Well, thanks again, folks. And if you have a chance, I'll put the links in. Send Helsinki an email. If you're an ex-Jehovah's Witness, tell your story. Tell them what it's really like, the shunning process, the breaking of your human rights. I think as ex-members, we should flood this organization with thousands of letters, thousands of emails, and let them see what's happening all over the world, that this is, in fact, a cult that these guys are fighting for. Well, thanks again, folks, and keep living your life with love. We don't follow cults when we live our life with love. We don't shun people. It's not in the program. It's not what Jesus taught. We just love people. We love our neighbor. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.